Well, good morning, and thank you very much for joining us. I am Yori Folari. Security. We're looking at security today, and the very disturbing news that sort of broke yesterday about who are behind what and which attacks, and it looks like there seems to be some sort of a linkage, some sort of a continuity. You look at any of the papers this morning. This broke from yesterday night. ISWAP claims responsibility for the strike on the prison that has become all the news, and we're hearing from security analysts that there is a linkage between the Kaduna Abuja train hijack, train disturbance, whatever you want to call it, and as you know, people were kidnapped in that particular incident. We're hearing that they were linked. Even more worrying, we're hearing that negotiators on this for the kidnapped passengers in the ill-fated Kaduna-Abuja train, they actually knew, they had been hinted that there in all probability would be a hit on, a correctional facility. Allegedly, the authorities didn't do anything about it. Now, we have professionals, so that don't just go with what we see on social media. Let's ask the professionals. And today, two security experts are joining me. Dr. Kabir Adamu, a security management and intelligence specialist, MD Beacon Consulting. He joins us. Good morning to you, Dr. Adamu.
Good morning, Uncle Yuri. Happy to be here.
Indeed, our pleasure. Thank you as always. First of all, could you set the record straight, because I know you're going to be all on it, the news that came that there is now a link that was not known at the time between the organization that hit the Kaduna-Abuja train and those that went and freed Boko Haram and, in fact, all the prisoners there. First of all, what can you tell us about that fact?
Okay, so that information is emerging from what in intelligence parlance we call a reliable source.
Okay.
He is a media practitioner who is also at the same time associated with the controversial Sheikh Gumi. And over the years, he has intervened and has shown capacity in terms of his ability to reach and have access to these non-state actors. And so when he releases such information, it is something to be considered. However, in intelligence practitioner, what we do is we always try to corroborate our sources, irrespective of whether that source is credible or not. Now, in this instance, I am aware that there hasn't been any corroboration of that information. And that is one. Secondly, the nature of association between these groups has levels. So the parent body, which is Islamic State, drives the ideology. Now it has what it calls affiliates. And in the Nigerian context, its major affiliate is the Islamic State in West Africa province. But we also know that these parent groups, these organizations, sometimes also partner criminal groups. So as an example, we know that the Kaduna attack had a component of some criminal groups. The bandits that operate in north central Nigeria also participated in that attack. Now, is it possible that this Kuje raid or complex attack that happened in Kuje also had the participation of some of these criminal groups? Yes, it's possible. Is it also possible that ISWAP, the Islamic State in West Africa province, participated in that? It's also possible. So again, all of these unfolding situations, and there are things that would need to be looked into. Now, in terms of the location where the incident happened, Kuje has forest linked to it that runs to as far as Kaduna State. And since we know that ISWAP has active presence in Kaduna, as well as further down into Niger State, and then upper into the northwestern part of the country, then the possibility that these groups followed this route through the forest to carry out this attack and may have returned there is also another factor. In essence, what I'm saying is that these non-state actors, some of them terrorists, some of them criminal, may have either collaborated together or separately to carry out that attack. The likelihood based on all of these things that I've mentioned makes it possible. The third point, which is also very important, in May this year, the global body called IS launched a campaign to where it asked its members across the world to free their membership that were in government detention. And so we saw Nigerian IS affiliates responding to that campaign. And again, this recent attack in Kuje may have been another response by the Nigerian affiliates to IS to that global campaign for it to free its members. Perhaps in the course of the conversation, we can speak about why the Nigerian state did not heed that warning coming from IS, as it were.
In fact, I think now is as good a time as any to examine that allegation that Nigerian authorities were alerted earlier that this could happen, but allegedly no action was taken. In what circumstances does that kind of thing tend to happen, where they get intelligence, but the evaluation of it is that we don't need to bother about this? Well, how does that happen?
Now, in the Nigerian context, the security sector, and unfortunately, several sectors, it's not peculiar to security. You have this lack of accountability where, government departments, unfortunately, do not take responsibility for actions. Now, in this instance, one of the major challenges that we have as a country is that intelligence is not fused. The fusion of intelligence, which the US realized after 9/11, that led them to create the Department of Homeland Security and also make several changes within their security architecture, where we have that challenge in Nigeria. Intelligence is sometimes generated, intelligence is shared, but then it's not acted upon. We can single out the coordinating elements within the national security architecture, the Office of the National Security Advisor, the Minister of Interior, Minister of Defense, Minister of Police Affairs, and then 2 departments within the presidency as squarely responsible for this. We can also single out the intelligence boards. I think there is a National Joint Intelligence Committee or board where all the intelligence agencies meet. Now, if this components that I mentioned are doing their work, they are the ones who are supposed to perform some element of oversight and monitoring and evaluation within the intelligence community, so that where there are failures of this type, it would be corrected. Another very important element is also the absence of an intelligence fusion center. But I'm also happy to note that the Office of the National Security Advisor has gone far in terms of the creation of that intelligence fusion center. The building has been finished. I think the equipping it is almost finished. And so the next stage is to make it operational. Now, if that center is operational, it means intelligence from all the community, not just the agencies that are responsible for intelligence, but even the security ones, such as the police, law enforcement components who have intelligence units. It can be brought to that fusion center, and then we'll now start seeing pictures, because intelligence is a painstaking process where you put together small pieces and then a picture emerges. So if you have a fusion center, it will help in that regard. Now, no matter how good that fusion center is, if this component of coordination that I mentioned earlier on is also not strengthened, then we'll be where we are. That brings me to the last point, which is the role of the legislature in terms of oversight to ensure that these bodies actually do the things they're supposed to do. Now, if in this instance, there was intelligence that a custodial center was going to be attacked, I believe that the oversight function, not just by the legislature, but also by the coordinating elements within the national security architecture, should have conducted an investigation to find out who was that intelligence sent to. Why didn't that person act upon it? And then, of course, corrective measures would be taken. And that brings me to my last point, which is the absence of penalty. When these failures happen, we don't find out who is responsible and then take corrective measures in terms of either suspending that person and then applying the provisions of the civil service rule or whatever body he belongs to. If it's the military, their internal arrangement there. So all of these things are unfortunately responsible for the failure to act on intelligence in Nigeria.
Which is quite, distressing. It's unfortunate. To go back to the story that, as you said, is emerging and remains to be corroborated, that there's a link between the team, group, gang that attacked the Kaduna-Abuja train and those that hit the Kuje prison. There's also out there that the authorities, of course, we now know the authorities had a number of Boko Haram members in there. Reportedly, they had demanded as a deal that they release their commanders in jail, in captivity, for them to also release to us, to the Nigerian state, those people that they had kidnapped. Of course, one knows that sounds preposterous to most ordinary people, and I don't see that that kind of a thing government would have wanted to comply. But as they have now released those people, who was it? A minister was saying yesterday that not a single one of the 64 odd, now we're hearing that it's a bit more than that, has been apprehended. So could this, again, staying in the realm of not really knowing very much that is going on, that's the nature of intelligence and these kind of things, could it be that this has been enforced? They wanted their commanders released. I don't know if we are now going to be seeing the release of more of the Kaduna captives, the train hijack captives.
So this depends on a lot of factors. Like I mentioned earlier on, the attack that happened, that targeted the train, based on our understanding, had a combination of both the terrorist elements as well as the criminal or bandit elements. And if you recall, there was a demand for the release of some children, and we believe that that demand came from the bandit elements, not the terrorist element. So these groups are probably going to sit down, appraise the development, see the assets they have at their disposal, and then take a decision. It's likely, as an example, they could now turn this political demand or prisoner exchange demand to now a financial demand, now specifically to the families of the victims, where they would ask them, for instance, to pay for the release of their family members, which to my understanding is actually a good development, because now it would now be in the hand of the family members to release their victims, as against the current situation where it's no longer in their hands. Of course, there are several other scenarios which I don't want to speak about at this moment, but suffice to say, the situation has changed and the groups are going to take a decision, I think, on the basis of this new development. What would be the game changer is if our government wakes up. I make bold to say we know where this group is. We should garner our national power and go after this group and change the equation. Right now, the success is on their attempts. They've attempted, they've successfully conducted the attacks. They are holding on to their victims over 100 days. Now their confidence is boosted. The only way to change the equation is to dent a blow and make them vulnerable. Unless we do that, they are going to continue to call the shots.
Quite frankly, as was saying, the attacks on correctional facilities, aka prisons in local parlance, it's getting to be incessant. We're seeing it not just in one place. We saw it in the East. And we don't have the kind of resources, those of us that are watching documentary programs on National Geographic, we see prisons in America. They even show us some of the engineering so that those places are locked down tight and it's almost impossible to get out of. We don't have those kind of resources. So it is what it is. We have what we have. But is there anything that can be done? Because it looks like all these people need to just come up with is an idea that, look, if the Nigerian authorities are not giving us joy, I think we're going to have to deal with them again. And that's very worrying that they seem to be able to strike at will. I get the impression that these ISWAP, all these bandits, they're not just riffraff the way many Nigerians might think, for people to be doing the kind of things they're doing. We hear that they actually have specialists among them. What kind of people are these people that are worrying us so?
So let me start from your last question. The group is an international group and operates globally. At a point, the headquarters of Islamic State used to be Syria, or the border between Syria and Iraq. Now it has membership from across the world. Some of the members came from the US, from several parts of Europe. Now, some of those members are well educated in all the various fields that you can think of. Some of them are medical, doctors, some of them are scientists, some of them are, name them. They've got skill sets that any modern company would be proud to have. Now, what they did is to coalesce that knowledge into the working requirements of the group. So as an example, they were able to manufacture drones and then arm those drones and use them to deliver weapons across locations. They are able to, put together IEDs, improvised explosive devices, and then use vectors for the application of those drones. They are also able to conduct cyber warfare, both within the mainstream cyberspace as well as within the dark web. Now, all of that technology is available to their affiliates across the world. Some of this technology is easily conveyed through the social media or through the cyberspace. So as an example, you can go into the cyberspace and learn how to put together an IED. That is their way of transferring knowledge. Some require physical transfer. So you will have movement from the mainstream body in the border area between Iraq and Syria down to Libya, and then probably down to Nigeria, as an example. This is just one ramification of it. You also have other channels through which they move this knowledge and technology and skill sets down to their affiliates. So what worries me at this moment, and my advice to the Nigerian state, is to pick up the profile of the 60+ persons that have been released. What are the skill sets that have been, I'm hoping that we had interrogated them. I'm hoping that we've kept dossiers on their skill sets and capabilities. So we need to pick up those files, look at what capabilities they have, and then make sure we anticipate the types of incidents that those skill sets are going to transform into. Because now that they are free, they are likely to go and ramp up the capabilities of this group, and that would translate to the type of attacks that we're likely to see coming in the coming weeks and months and years. So if we do that, we can anticipate and then put in place mitigation measures to ensure that even where they decide to come up with those attacks, we prevent and stop that. As an example, the bombing, some of the suspects, based on what we know, were suspects that had conducted bombing of religious places of worship, government installations, international bodies, facilities that belong to Western countries and all that. So if, as a way of anticipating what will happen, are they going to resume that type of method of attack? The answer is yes. So what do we do in this instance? We put in place anti-terrorism mitigation measures, putting in mind the likelihood of the targets that I've just mentioned. That for me would be the forward way of thinking. The kind of lamentation I'm hearing from our security agencies, honestly, it's not needed, because the deed has been done. The die is cast. They are free. So what do? Either go after them to kill or arrest them, or put in place these mitigation measures to prevent their happening. In a nutshell, the skill sets that the group has, the global body, is available to all its affiliate members, including the affiliate member in Nigeria.
Well, we also, our own army resources, they also have access to all of this. What I'm trying to say really is that if they can get it, because you just said that, among other things, you can learn how to put together an IED online. Our security experts also know all of this. How come such knowledge is not able to be deployed even before it happens? It's a bit frustrating, and to you it might seem like it's a very simple matter, but to most people who are not pros in it, they can't seem to understand that these groups, including ISWAP, Boko Haram, whatever it is, are giving our army the run around. The army seems to be on the back foot, so much so that people have complained in the theater of operations that perhaps the thing to do is to not wait and react to a strike from them. Why can't we take the fight out to them to just not give them any peace with the final objective of dislodging them altogether? Is that a pipe dream?
No, not at all. It's a logical expectation from a logical human being. Every right-thinking Nigeria, law-abiding Nigeria has that expectation. There are 27 ministries, departments, and agencies that are involved in security in Nigeria. The army is just one of them. And more importantly, we have a national counter-terrorism strategy. Now, that national counter-terrorism strategy have defined rules for all the departments that I've mentioned, the 27 of them. In fact, more importantly, for every Nigerian, you and I, as you are the media practitioner, there is a role for you in that strategy. And then myself as an ordinary Nigerian, if you describe me as that, there's a role for me in that strategy. But how many Nigerians actually are aware that we have a national counter-terrorism strategy? Are you also aware that there is a commander counter-terrorism who has an office and has responsibility and is domiciled in the office of the National Security Advisor? How many times have we interrogated the role of that commander? How many times have we seen that commander playing his role as the coordinating element for counterterrorism strategy? Or has that role been taken over by the army or the military that you mentioned? So those are the challenges. We are not following the principles, the framework that we have come up with to deal with issues. Rather, all we do is knee-jerk reactions. Things happen, perhaps because there's a vacuum, the military takes over, and nobody at any point in time stops and say, well, look, we've got a strategy. How come we're not following the implementation of that strategy? Yeah. Has that strategy been operationalized? Is there an implementation strategy for that national counterterrorism strategy? Those are the challenges, and I'm hoping that, now that we're in a pre-election year, the candidates within the ruling party and the political parties too would pick up these documents and begin to interrogate them, study them, and see why there have been massive failures in the implementation of those documents. Okay. That would be one moment, please. I beg your pardon,
Dr. Adamu. Mohammed has called in from Abuja. He wants to join the program. Good morning, Mr. Adamu. I beg your pardon, Mr. Mohammed in Abuja.
Yeah, good morning, Uncle Yori.
Good morning, sir.
Yeah, thank you for the program today. I just have 2 to 3 questions to ask Mr. Adamu, if he can answer us.
Can I go ahead? Yes, okay. Please.
Number one, my question is, I learned that the correctional centers received intelligence either 1 month before the attack, and nothing has been done. What is the problem behind that? Is there a collusion between the correctional center and the ISWAP to release their members? Number one. Then number two, Mr. I cannot hear you.
Please, please carry on. Just carry on, please.
Yeah, number two question is, Mr. Adamu made mention of the ISWAP has membership all over the world, in the US, in Europe, in Africa, in Asia. What is their intention? Is their intention to Islamize it? Is their intention has a tool of Islamization, or is religious tool or nothing? Or is their intention is just to destroy the community?
Okay, Mr. Mohammed, thank you very much. You did say 2 or 3 questions, though we took the option of 2. Thank you very much for contributing to the program. Dr. Adamu, the second question he asked, because you've already addressed the first earlier in the program, maybe you hadn't joined us then. A lot of people might also be wondering, What exactly is the objective of all this aggression by non-state actors? What is it that they want, is the question Mr. Mohammed is asking.
In the case of Islamic State, their objective is to set up an Islamic caliphate. You're aware that they did name an Amir at the point, but this series of their Amirs have been killed by the US. The latest of the killings was in February this year when the Amir and his spokesperson was killed. So in simple terms, their objective is to set up an Islamic caliphate.
Sorry. Hello, Dr. Adamu?
Yeah, I don't know if you heard me.
Yes, we did. We did hear you. Please continue.
Yeah, so that's really their objective. And
to set up an Islamic caliphate.
Yes, so to set it up so that it runs side by side as a country with all the requirements of any country, land. It has its jurisdiction over that land, and it's run as any state in the world, just similar to what the Taliban has done in Afghanistan. That's their objective in simple terms. Well,
of course, there's no way Nigeria is going to even consider, never mind agree to that kind of a thing. But at some point, with the trade-off between what is effective and the cost, the price that we are paying, I don't know how this is going to be resolved, because they seem to be able, because of their nature, their formations, to get up at will and cause havoc and then retreat into the forest. It's quite frustrating, as you can imagine. But we're stuck with that for now?
So for us to, earlier on I mentioned that we need to shift the equation. Right now, they're emboldened. They've carried out several attacks and they've been successful. It's simple psychology of warfare. If your adversary attacks you and he or she is successful, he's emboldened and he would carry out further attacks. Now, for us to dent that boldness, to change the psychology, we need to hit them where it will hurt them. And like I mentioned earlier on, we know where they are. They are holding out in ungoverned spaces, forested parts, mountainous areas within the north central and northwest of Nigeria. We need to, as a country, fatten out ways to go after them and deny them that space to operate. That's number one.
Oh, okay, I beg your pardon, Doctor. I'm going to have to come back to you. Let me take a break. We'll come back and we'll continue this analysis you're helping us with. Stay with us, please. We'll be right back. Welcome back, and we're having this conversation with Dr. Kabir Adamu, Security Management and Intelligence Specialist, MD of Beacon Consulting. Thank you very much, Dr. Adamu. In the meantime, Tony has called in from Manchester. Good morning, Tony, in Manchester.
Yes, good morning, Uncle Yeri.
Good morning, sir.
I'm just want to put one or two questions to your guest, Dr. Adamu. Okay. It will appear that the security of the nation has been breached. And what does he think? Like engaging military contractors or mercenaries to oversee, some sections of the security and come up with a report that will be in the public domain?
Okay. Thank you very much for this question, Tony. Dr. Adamu, what do you think about that idea? It's been mooted in the past, but I don't think the federal government is particularly enamored of that idea.
Yes, it's a difficult one in the sense that we do have a challenge, and the current disposition that we have is not solving that challenge. In fact, if anything, the challenge is increasing. And so the natural tendency would be to look for external help. And recently, people have been citing the example of Ukraine. Ukraine realized that it cannot, face one-on-one the enemy that invaded it, and so it sought global support. But that situation for me is slightly different. I am of the opinion that we do need a security sector reform. And that security sector reform perhaps can be based on an analysis that an outsider helps us in conducting. And I'm also aware that, it's not as if we don't have external support at the moment. The British do have almost a permanent presence in our Ministry of Defense. The US have been supporting us in training, support services at different levels of government and security. And then European countries too have been doing the same thing. So we've got that kind of support. But then to go all the way out and get specific military contractors to come down and assist in certain aspects, including, for instance, our counter-terrorism challenge, it's an option, but it's not as important as a security governance reform to block the loopholes that have been identified. One loophole, as an example, we've talked about coordination here. No contractor will come and block that loophole for you. It's something you have to do yourself. The challenges within the operations of our security organizations, NSAS happened, and we all know why NSAS happened. Has that been corrected? Frankly, in a scale of 1 to 10, I doubt if just 2 out of the various challenges within that sector have been corrected. So again, I think what we need more than anything is that security sector governance reform that would help block the gaps that would have allowed the level of impunity and lack of responsibility within our security sector. Again, embedded in that is to strengthen the capacity of our legislative arm of government in its oversight function within the security sector. This is a legacy from our military rule. If the legislature was more stronger in terms of its oversight functions, it would have corrected some of this capacity. But unfortunately, because of this military legacy, the legislature itself is a little bit uncomfortable in terms of its oversight function. What has happened is, unfortunately, sometimes it collaborates with these agencies to continue the impunity that we're seeing at the moment. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's an option, but it will not solve the problem.
Okay. Mazi Okorafor in Arochukwu. Good morning, sir. Did we lose Mazi Okorafor? Mazi Okorafor in Arochukwu. I'm sorry. I think we lost the call. So even as you explained, Dr. Adamu, there's also a matter of pride in there as well. But I don't know. We are in a serious problem. People are apparently, that is the terrorists. Look, that reminds me, even the president's advanced security team, they touched it as a sort of a PR effort, not just touching it. I understand that. Unfortunately, one man in uniform, it was fatal for him. So they know what they're doing. Why would you need to do that? But for, I don't know what you people call it professionally, but PR value to show that contrary to what the Nigerian state is saying, we are still up here and we can touch wherever we want to touch. And this is worrying. It really is worrying because we're talking about worrying and being disturbed by attacks on correctional centers. But quite frankly, they are running amok, and for some of the reasons that you've given us. But look at the incident of the president's advanced security team being attacked.
So Uncle Yuri, earlier on, I was trying to put forward some of the measures that would help us bring this to an end.
Okay, sir. Sorry for jumping lanes.
Yeah, yes. I talked about going after them in this ungoverned spaces where they are hibernating and planning and coming out.
Taking the fight to them.
Exactly. The second point is to reduce their mobility. They've adopted a means of mobility that we've not been able to stop. I know some state governors have banned the movement of motorcycles, but unfortunately that ban only affected the law-abiding citizens. It didn't affect them. So one of the best ways we could limit their capacity to attack us is to stop their mobility. How do we do that? How do we put in place measures to control and contain the activities of anyone who has a bike? How do we know when a bike is bought? How do we know do we have in place measures to ensure that those bikes are registered? Do we have measures in place to ensure that when you buy fuel, that we know where that fuel is going to? Because think about it, if 100 plus of them moved to attack that convoy from what we're hearing, and then of course the same thing, the Kuje Prison, where we're in a period where you and I, if we need to buy petroleum, we have to go and queue up. So how did they get that quantity of fuel to move around from, let's say, Kaduna all the way to Abuja? And then, you know, so again, it goes back to my earlier point. We have 27 ministries, departments, and agencies in security, and we're not holding them to account. How come, you know, these non-state actors are able to get the kind of logistics that they need for their activities? And there's the president said it yesterday. He expressed his frustration. So I'm hoping that the administrative machinery around Mr. President would have picked up that frustration and turned that statement into tasking orders in form of query to all these members of the 27 MDAs, and then put in place that administrative machinery, send out these queries in terms of either tasking orders or operational tasks to all of them, and then have key performance indicators that is measurable, so that within a period of a week or two, they expect the response of these organizations, and then they can put that response together and identify the lapses that led to that. But anything short of stopping their mobility, and then, like I said, denting a blow to their psychology, the boldness that they have at the moment. Yes. Unfortunately, it means this will continue.
Okay, one moment, please. Francis in Abuja, thank you very much for holding on. Go ahead now, please.
First, let me appreciate Dr. Adamu for giving a very professional touch to the issue under discuss. I think I'm interested in the frequent attacks on consider centers across the country. I want to believe very strongly that until we enlist the support of members of the public, the ordinary man on the street, and educate them to the level they begin to see themselves as co-owners of consider centers in the country, we may not get anywhere. What is the question I want to ask is, how do we generate intelligence? When we generate the intelligence, how do we process the intelligence? If you go to typical consider centers we have in the country, you have complement of security operatives, from the military to the paramilitary organization, DSS, and all of that. I am not sure they frequently carry out simulation exercises to determine their response capacity.
Yes.
In addition to that, talking about the Kuje incident that just happened, we have military formation all over the place. What level of simulation exercises have they been carrying out? Assuming these people come in the night, coming from the right flank or left flank or north or east flank, how do we respond? Who takes the lead? Why responding? What is the time of reinforcement? How do we reduce the time of reinforcement? From who? From police, from the military?
Reaction time,
so have we been able to factor in all these things in our security calculation? Because in the chain of security management, you talk about deterrence, you talk about detection, you talk about denial, you talk about defense, which is the last lap. Have we been able to systematically appraise these different layers and carry out and simulate?
Let's put the question to Dr. Adamu.
It gives me cause for worry.
So Francis,
now, first of all, Dr. Adamu, is intelligence generated or gathered?
Both. You have to, the intelligence cycle has about 5 stages, and in that cycle it includes collection. Now when you collect, you conduct your analysis, and through that process, so the gathering stage is to an extent the collection stage, but then you just, what you collect at that stage is raw data, and then of course when you analyze it, it gives you a sense of whether that intelligence is valuable or not. But then most times, even if it's not valuable at that point in time, it could be valuable in the future. So yes, it's collected and it's also gathered. It's just, I think, depending on what balance you want to use at that point in time. But that's not what even worries me. Francis made some very valid points, but we have to put it in context. Part of the challenge in Nigeria is that we do not deploy security in concentric layers. Modern security deployment requires that, especially in an environment where you don't have enough resources. Mm-hmm. And then what you do, you now deploy specific locations. So that stretches your resources, and then it also exposes the gaps. But if you now deploy in concentric layers, and Francis mentioned some of the components of those concentric layers. He mentioned detect, he mentioned deny, he mentioned delay, and response. So for every location, Kuje as an example, which is a consul in Abuja, there are 6 consuls in Abuja. If I were going to deploy on the basis of these concentric layers, I'll first look at the detection component. Now, 100 motorbikes are coming to Kuje. I should have the capability to detect that there are new 100 motorbikes coming into Kuje. The second element is to how do I deny those 100 motorbikes from reaching targets? I already know the targets as a security player in that location. If I'm the DPO in charge of a location in Kuje, I'm the national security advisor, I'm a member of the guards of brigade, securing the president. What are the likely targets? How do I deny those 100 motorbikes from reaching that target? The second element is even if I can't deny them, the third element rather, even if I can't deny them, how do I delay them in such a point that I now put in place the last element, which is response? Now, this is how normal security management should be conducted in a scientific and systematic manner. Well, unfortunately, in my experience, we don't do that in Nigeria. Like one of the guest callers mentioned earlier on, these security organizations operate in silos. There is also an unhealthy rivalry among them. So how can you even speak of concentric layers? Uncle Yuri, pick up a common protractor that you can buy probably at 100 Naira and now do a cycle around Kuje and try to identify the various formations, security formations out of these 27 MDAs that I mentioned earlier on. You'll be shocked at the number that you find. Now, to think that this group operated for 3 hours without the last component of the concentric cycle I mentioned coming into play, a lot of persons should lose their job by now if I had any power in this country.
Yeah, okay. Mazi Okorafor has called back in again. Thank you for that, Mazi. Please go ahead now, sir.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, I guess. The federal government military display yesterday in Owerri has shown that we have a lot to fight ISWAP, whether terrorists either by air or by land, by sea, but we are not ready.
Okay,
to do
the Nigerian Army final day, celebration.
Is this over 100 something armored candidates assorted, different brands, different operations? What happened? When operation happened, why the Nigerian government don't make use of it? So the question is this is purely entrepreneurial terrorism that we are having in Nigeria. Now, why detaining these terrorists in prison? Awaiting trial. Now, something happened in Kaduna. All these boys were back to Abuja. Look at the proceedings there. According to American report this morning, they said within Abuja environment that each terrorist distance is 24 yards in each environment in Abuja. That the FBI report this morning about what happened in Abuja, 24 yards outside from any place you find yourself, which means automatically everywhere is just been combed by these terrorists. Now, the way forward, if the Nigerian military, what they showed us yesterday in that military day in Abuja, in Owerri, that they will make use of it to fight terrorism, the better. But if they refuse, I repeat, if they refuse, I repeat, if they do 3 times, if they refuse to use it, that means they are not ready to fight terrorism. Point blank. We should face the reality of that. But they should know that Nigeria is our country. We cannot go anywhere. If we like, let us destroy this country. What is happening in the future, nobody knows. Only heaven and earth knows. The military shows this is purely business-oriented. No operation, like our guests in the studio, you are aware that there is no operation that's happened anywhere without an insider, true or false. Good morning.
Thank you very much, Mazi Okorafor, sounding a bit frustrated. And let me bring to you, Dr. Adamu, the concept of you can't wipe out Boko Haram because they are ours too. I might have phrased it clumsily, but this notion, because when people had asked in exasperation, what are you talking about? The whole Nigerian army with all, in fact, the armed forces, we can't uproot these people. We've been told in the past that, well, you see, it's not exactly an external kind of a war where there is no mercy apart from conventions of war. Give me your, I think I'd value your commentary on that aspect of the reason why Boko Haram is being so difficult.
Okay, Uncle Yuri, sorry, I lost you for a few seconds.
Well, I was related to Mazi's question. It is felt that there's a soft sort of kid gloves approach to the battle against Boko Haram because they are Nigerians too. How much credence do you put on that kind of notion?
It's difficult to reach that conclusion given the kind of, the way the federal government has prioritized security. If you recall, I mean, during the 2015 elections, security was one of the deciding elements. And of course, the current government made security one of its tripod focus areas. And then of course, in 2019, it did the same thing. The National Assembly, the same thing. The 8th Assembly and the 9th Assembly have all put security as part of their legislative agenda. So it's very difficult. But one of the major issues, I would say, which we need to contend with as a country is the origins of both the criminal aspect of these issues we're discussing, as well as the terrorist aspect of it, has to an extent to do with bad governance. In other words, there are grievances, political grievances, that are yet to be addressed and that have given cause to the challenges that we have as a country. So perhaps maybe that notion has also led to this lack of willingness by those in power to use force to address some of these issues. But then again, like I mentioned at the beginning, if you look at the fact that there are several military operations ongoing at the moment in the Northwest, there's the Operation Hadarin Daji. It's at its fourth stage now. There was 1, there was 2, 3. Now we're at fourth stage. If you look at Plateau State and parts of Kaduna State, there's Operation Safe Haven. I think it's the longest serving military operation in Nigeria. So and all of this, we've seen military, especially Air Force sorties, dropping bombs. In fact, your station is covering a story currently in Katsina, where a bomb was dropped in a town mistakenly and it killed innocent people. So it would be really unfair, I think, to reach that conclusion that they are dealing with this with gloves and kit gloves.
Yes, one moment, Doctor. Let me bring in Kesandu. I think Kesandu, good morning. You're a last caller. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, sir. Good morning, Doc. May I first commend Doc for this wonderful analysis and the panacea he has brought out for us in this quagmire. But Uncle Yuri, I want to express my heartfelt disappointment what happened in Abuja, the seat of power. That if this thing can actually happen in Abuja, then we're finished. Uncle Yuri, I am from Imo State, and we complained about this when it happened there. It has happened in several states. Uncle Yuri, what happened to our intelligence gathering? Uncle Yuri, where are these people coming from? Uncle Yuri, are you telling us that before this thing happened, the intelligence we have in this country, vis-a-vis where this thing happened, did not at any point hear that something like this is happening? Uncle Yuri, is it not high time we started asking questions in this country? How did these people enter that place? How did these people go? Who are those who are supposed to be on duty? Uncle Yuri, it's high time somebody gave us answers to these questions. Nigerians are no longer safe because if you can attack Kuje Prison, unleash all these terrorists, then there is trouble in the land. Considering everything America has actually told us about attacks that will be happening even down south and everywhere in this country, Exactly. I think Mr. President must wake up to this responsibility. Nigerians feel so disappointed. I am so disappointed. But I want him to set up a panel of inquiry that within 48 or 72 hours will come up with what exactly happened and how these people get entry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Case Andrew. We've run out of time, but thank you for your question. Well, some of it has been, touched on by Dr. Adamu. If even the president said he's disappointed, even the president, never mind you and me. So, Dr. Adamu, it is what it is, but people are hoping that we don't have to just continue to live like this for some sort of resolution. But the matter of an Islamic caliphate is totally off the table, out of the question, right?
Wishfully thinking, yeah, it is totally out of the question. Why do I say this? And I say this with all sense of responsibility. Afghanistan should be a wake-up call for us. We all thought it was totally off the table, but we're where we are at the moment. So we need to wake up. We need to wake up. We need to call a spade. We need to hold accountable all those that we've given responsibilities.
We're going to have to leave it there, Dr. Adamu. I beg your pardon. We're going to have to leave it there. But I want to thank you very much for coming on our program today and giving us this valuable security and intelligence insight into our polity, quite frankly. Thank you very much, Dr. Adamu, as always.
Thank you for having me.
So that's our program. Thank you very much for being with us, joining us. Please join us tomorrow for a fresh edition. I'm Yori Folarin. Bye-bye for now.